Hey there, everybody. Welcome back with the Plat. Purplatypus is the name. Octopath Traveler 2 is the game today. I'm going to give you basically my impressions of the game overall, my thoughts. This is kind of like a more casual review, but I don't want to call it a full review because we're not going to really... This is going to be a little more loosey-goosey, not heavy editing, not with a script. I'm just going to kind of talk about the game, the things that I like, the things that I dislike, and my overall verdict on the game. But yeah, we're gonna jump right into it. Be careful if you're, there might be some spoilers in here. I'll try to avoid spoilers as much as possible, but every now and then I might let something slip. I don't know, but we're just gonna talk about the game, give my overall impressions of it. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. To be fair, there is no ugly. This game is beautiful. Looking at you, HD 2D art style. Love the art style. Fantastic. But so one of the first questions that people ask that I've at least heard is like, if you've played, do you need to play Octopath Traveler 1? And the honest answer is no. You have no need to play Octopath Traveler 1. You will get a little more out of the post-game super boss and the very, very late game. You'll start seeing some more overarching themes, but for the most part, these games are completely separate, and it's mostly just like nods to things that you've seen, right? Things have similar names, like the items will have the same names as in Octopath Traveler 1. You'll see some returning characters that aren't actually returning characters, but like Biggs and Wedge from Final Fantasy, right? They're like in every game. There's like the thieves that have that name. So you'll get a bunch of nods and it'll feel good. But for the most part, they're completely separate worlds. Not the same continent, not the same like overarching lore. From what I could tell, the characters are all different time period. Everything is different. Okay. So you have no need to play Octopath Traveler 1 before playing this game. However, if you wanted to play Octopath Traveler 1, you could as well. It's a great game, but don't feel bad starting here. So the world in general is a very good world. It kind of has a lot of the same issues that Octopath Traveler 1 has, but it's also better in a lot of ways. It has a lot more... I would say they improved over Octopath Traveler 1 in almost every way. I don't want to just compare it to that game, but they've done a good job of really opening up the world in a lot of ways. Like a lot of these areas are just a little more free to explore. There's a lot more interconnectivity in it. Like Octo 1, I felt like there was a lot of corridors, and there is a lot of corridors in this too, where you're just following past, but like they've done a good job of opening up the areas and allowing them to have access to more areas, adding more hidden things. So overall, the world is like very beautiful, and it has like almost an open world vibe to it. Like it's not an open world in a sense. I mean, I guess it is, you can go to anywhere you want at any time. So in that sense it is, but it's still not like Breath of the Wild open world, right? Like you're still going in the zones. The zones have very strict loading transitions like this, and then you enter, and now you're just boom, you're in the middle of a snowy mountain, right? As opposed to being in a green field. It's more like World of Warcraft in that sense, where you take 3 steps and then you go from being in mountains to being in Red Ridge Mountains to Desolate or Destitute, whatever. I don't remember what those zones are called, but you know what I mean. Like very, very abrupt zone changes, but it does have an open world vibe to it. But overall, all the areas have been very good, and there's a few particularly stunning ones. Like if we come to Lost Seed, at Lost Seed at nighttime is just like freaking gorgeous. Like in the middle of night, the moon, and when you're in battles, the moon is in the background. Just fucking honestly, the presentation of this game is a 10 out of 10. They've done a really good job. Yeah, go ahead and take me over here. But besides that, this game has like a lot of going on where the presentation in general is just really good. Like it's really good at giving you big epic moments. When you go into boss fights, like the music, oh my God, the music of this game is so good. I think this is something that everyone should like just listen to the OST, but we got a few examples here, right? Like, and they spread the whole, like all the emotions, right? The music really has an emotional reaction. At least for me, it's like top tier, some of the best music in RPGs of all time. I recommend going on YouTube and looking up some of the OST, but in the game you have access to some of it as well. But like some of the most fucking epic boss themes of all time, where you just go into these fights, the boss is this big fucking giant sprite, unlike the normal little sprites you find or you fight, and then this music kicks in, and then there's like cutscenes in the middle of fights. This game is really good when it comes to the presentation. But also, like, one of my favorite songs in the game is Oswald's song. It just, like, it perfectly illustrates this emotion here. But, like, listen to this. It's like, it just exudes sadness. And then he even has, all the characters even have like an initial song, then they have like a remake of the song where it's like the same song but with like different instruments and has a different emotional feeling to it. Later, like this song goes from like sadness and despair to like later you could hear like a later version of the song near the end of his story where it's like more ramped up and it's like anger and stuff like that. Very good, like next, out of this world, next level music direction. I fucking love it. Now where the game starts to fall, but I'll try to do like a compliment sandwich. We'll do more of the things that I really like about the game first, and then we'll kind of get into the negatives. I love the characters of this game. I think this is one of the huge improvement. Every character, there's 7 wonderful, incredible characters with compelling stories and wonderful design and unique, fun, quirky personalities, and Agnia is here as well. But for the most part, like these characters are fucking like, they're just like, when you first meet Oswald, it just like starts the game. The game starts is like, I swear to God, Harvey, I will kill you for what you've done. And it's a prison escape. You're on a revenge mission to kill someone. It just like, you're instantly compelled. Then he's like this super badass fucking mage that blows the world up with his mind and is looking for basically the essence of God and magic and mathematics to blow shit up. He's just very fun. So all the characters have their own quirks and they're very likable. Their stories are so good. I love their stories. So like when it comes to stories, it's both a positive and a negative for me. It's a positive in the sense that I think the game does a really good job of it basically, it does short stories, right? There's an overarching story, but it's not like if you play Dragon Quest 11 where you start and you get to the end. This game isn't structured like that at all. It's basically got, each character has a series of 4 or 5 chapters, and they're telling like these 1-hour segment short stories through it as you go through. And so they're all broken up and you could kind of do them in whatever order you want. You want. But this game is like a masterclass of telling good, compelling short stories. These stories are so compelling and good and interesting. The only time that I don't love them is like if you go around and do all these chapter 1s and then you go to chapter 2 or whatever and you kind of forget what you were doing. So I like going from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you go from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, then you're way overpowered for the rest of the game. So I guess this is we'll get to my biggest negative complaints in a second here, but the last thing I kind of want to highlight on the positives is, I mean, obviously the gameplay. If you like JRPGs, you like JRPGs, right? The combat is particularly compelling. It's got one of the greatest combat systems ever created for RPGs. Maybe not quite the best, but it's up there. And I think it actually could be the best, if I'm being honest with you here. Let's go ahead and get into a combat here just to kind of give you a visual style of what it's like. But basically you've got this BP. I think they're called Brave Points. I think that's the acronym, but it's BP. And basically every turn your guys get BP, and except for the turn after you spend some, but then you could use this to enhance skills. So let's go ahead and use a character that already has more. So you can see like, right, I could use Stroke of Genius, right? Grant myself 2 attribute raising effects. However, I could use a boost point. And then it's like, now I get 3 attribute raising effects, and now I use 4. So you build this up over time, and it kind of gives you a way to take extra turns. It's not really extra turns, but it's a way to augment your attacks with more powerful stuff. So you're always doing this, like, should I use BP? Should I not? I want to use full BP, but when you use like when you use any BP, like if you just want to, you only have one and you use one, next turn you're missing out because you won't generate BP the turn after you consume some. So like you're kind of like trying to hold back and use it. It's a very fun combat system in general for that kind of stuff. It adds a lot of thought process into the JRPG mechanic. And I want these kinds of games to continue going forward with this great, wonderful idea. But besides, like, so to get into the okay, final thing on the big positive thing here is the builds that you can do in this game are diverse, interesting, and fun, and tons of ways to break the game and kind of however you want. Like you could do simple things like, you know, your warrior character could become an arms master, which is like a stronger warrior. So you could improve on that. But there's all kinds of really, really crazy things you could do. You could build characters almost however you want. Like essentially you can, but there's always like a cool broken combo. Like Arcanist is a magic support class. You wouldn't normally think of this being good with the warrior, but there's a very specific warrior build you could do with the Arcanist that only one of your characters can do because they're the only one. You can only have 2 classes, your main class and a secondary. where they could use their seal of diffusion and they could have a dancer support them, and they could suddenly start doing a bunch of really, really broken, powerful things that no other character in the game can do when it's specifically this character as this job. And kind of all characters have this stuff that only they could do that no one else brings to the table. So you have 8 interesting, fun characters that could break the game in their own ways, and you could combine abilities in so many different ways, and you have different options of equipping different support skills, equipping different equipment with really powerful augmenting effects, anything from stats to making negative equipment strong to like just increasing the damage under certain situations, like when you're at low HP. And then axes have all these different, you know, attack effects, equip effects. So there's tons of ways to change and augment and make your characters powerful and to build them in different ways. And the whole game I'm playing, I'm discovering new ways to use these abilities in different combinations and how characters interact with other characters. Like, okay, this character could do this thing, but if I use this character's special ability to support my other character, now they could break the game in a different way, and I have this really powerful thing. So there's tons of build diversity, is I guess the way I'd put it, in this game, like tons. And they're all very fun. Like there's 1,000 ways to play this game and break it. Now, this comes with a caveat, and I would say that one of the bigger downside of the game. There's not that many downsides of this game. I have very, very little complaints. It's a fucking incredible JRPG, but I would say the game is too easy. And this is my experience. I know not everyone has an easy time with this game, but for the most part, people I talk to seem to agree. But also, I might be in an echo chamber of Octopath players. So I've played this combat system before in other games, and once you really get a good hand on the combat system, it's pretty easy to abuse it and break it a little bit too easy. And the game doesn't feel equipped to handle very experienced players in this regard. It feels like it's more trying to be very welcoming to new people. But like, without trying at all, I just got super over leveled way too fast just from playing efficiently, basically not grinding at all, just going and exploring with the right level of JP equipped, the experience equipped. I have a few videos about how to grind out there, but I wasn't really grinding. I just had those videos out there because I'm a content creator, and I know those kinds of videos get views. So I really didn't spend much of my game time actually grinding at all, if any. I would just go to new zones. I would just see a zone, go to it, and I'd push it. I'm like, all right, I'm not level 11, I'm level 7, but let's try to get through the zone. And then I was like, all right, level 14, let's go through this zone. And then I was like, all right, I want to get to Hikari's second story because I was playing Hikari. Then I wanted to do his third story, so I would kind of go around and explore. And before I knew it, I was like in level 40s and 50s. And then the rest of the game was just so easy. So I really wish that, and I don't know if it's that the game's too easy necessarily. I did find it too easy. I found there to be basically one lot of good boss fights, but one difficult boss fight in the game, and that is the end game, post game super boss. That fight is pretty difficult, and even then it only took me like 3 or 4 tries after I had a strategy set up that I wanted to do. Like, it took me like I was testing out things, so it took me like, I did like 5 or 6 tries of like what I would call not real attempts, but when I was really like, all right, this is the team I'm using, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through, I got it on my second try. So even that wasn't too hard, but it was a really good fight, really fun. But really, I don't know if it's that the game is too easy as much as my biggest complaint of the game in general, and this is kind of fundamental to what the game is, but I don't want it to diminish how good the game is as well. But there is something, it's the structure, the way the game is created and designed for you to play, I think is a huge negative, but a lot of people like it, but it's just something that I wish was different. And I play and I love the game despite the way it's structured. Now, what do I mean when I'm talking about the structure? I mean that there's 8 characters that don't necessarily have a reason to go together, and they have 8 separate stories. And so they each have their own little short stories here. So you kind of go around and do their short stories. But the way it is, like, I want to go through and finish the story, Greg, because I'm in the middle of doing Hikari's story, and he's like, all right, we're going to go lead the attack on Ku or whatever, and I'm like, all right, let's go. I'm ready. So I want to go do it, but I'm like, oh, I got to be level 45. So I kind of explored around, but then I wanted to go do that because I was right in it. But the issue is, once you complete someone's story, I had to go through, like, in the first 10 hours, I completed his story, probably 10, 15 hours. And then I had to go through 7 more stories, and they don't level adjust. Like, maybe the game just needs level scaling, but like, I was like, all right, this is like a level 10 thing, a level 5 thing. My characters are like level 40s, like, it just, everything was so easy. So like for 30 hours, I just dominated everything with like 1 rounding bosses. And that's just because, and it's not like that's just the structure, right? I don't like the structure of having these 8 characters they have to go pick up and they all go on their separate stories. Now, I don't know how to fix that. I think the game could just use level scaling. Like, it could detect the level of your party so you can keep a challenge going. Maybe add an extra hard mode for that. Maybe this needs a different game mode for like that kind of stuff, where they increase more than just the stats, but maybe add mechanics as you get more powerful as well. But it's just like, I don't know how to fix that without ruining the core of what makes the game so good, right? Because the game has these characters that are interesting and they have their own dedicated, important stories that are very good. They're all of the 8, well, 7 of the 8 stories are very good and interesting, and I really, really liked them. I mean, there's a ranking of them, but for the most part, 7 were good. Okay, 6 were fantastic. 1 was good. 1 was dog shit. But it's just like a very, very good structure in general in terms of how they like. I don't know how to change the structure without ruining the parts of the game that I love. I think that the overall just going around and collecting the characters it's a decision obviously that the game is built on, but I think it's a direction that I would like to see altered or greatly improved upon. I think that it makes too much of the overall experience too easy, and then you're playing the game more for your desire to see these stories and the love of characters rather than for the RPG mechanics, which is maybe what people really love, and I do love that too. But I also am playing a JRPG because I really do like JRPG mechanics. I want the really tough fights that you have to min-max the shit out of to beat. And this game doesn't really offer that in its current form. Now, the endgame super boss does have that, but that leads to my final complaint to the game, is that there's not enough post-game. The post-game consists of completing things that you could have completed before you finish the game. So like, you go through to these zones that you've already been to and you're like, all right, I missed these side quests. I just want to kind of wrap up all these things. But the only new thing that gets added is like one super boss. That's it. It's like they add one super boss to the game, which is an overarching theme of, I guess, the game, but there's not like an end game dungeon, a post game dungeon that's really difficult. There's one boss fight, and it was fun and it was a good boss fight, but it just needed more. Like, I spent so much of the game going through and slapping it around that I really wanted to get my RPG chops. You know, I really had a desire for these really difficult fights to use all these tools that they've given me, and I don't feel like the game properly had the content for players like me that are very, very into min-maxing and destroying the game. It's just a little bit too easy. Maybe, I don't know how they fix that. I don't know if they need to fix that. Like, the game overall is incredible and I love the game. And this is what's so weird, is like, I love the game, but I have a fundamental issue with the structure of the game. And it was the same for Octopath Traveler 1, in my opinion, where I love the combat. I love the mechanics. I love the freedom of jobs and the ability to make characters unique and interesting and powerful. I love the build diversity. I love the characters. I love the world. I love the art style. I love the music. I love the individual stories that the characters go through. But I think that the fundamental structure of the game undermines the JRPG mechanics difficulty in a way that is almost, I don't know how to solve it. Without having a separate difficulty mode that adds level scaling of the whole game as you progress. Like, that way, as you level up, enemies level up, and at which point, why have levels at all? You could just not have levels. And then, like, I don't think that this would be a big deal in a different type of game. Like, if you could imagine a Dark Souls-esque game, maybe not Dark Souls, but just like an action adventure game, like going through different characters chapters later, like, I don't feel like it would trivialize it to the point, because they could put new interesting combat mechanics, and they could do that in this, but it's like, my numbers are so much bigger than the enemy's numbers that it doesn't matter. I one-shot everything. And I do think that's a fundamental issue with the structure of this JRPG. And I kind of hope they take it a new direction with Octopath Traveler 3, or they just find a way to, through DLC, through just different stuff, to really cater to the JRPG hardcore fan base, the characters, the people rather, like me, that really like super difficult JRPGs. You know, like, not everything has to be Persona 3, right? Even Final Fantasy 10, right? Final Fantasy 10 is a very difficult game, especially your first time through. It becomes much easier once you really know how to break the game and min-max it. But like if you're just casually going through FF10, that game's fucking hard. There's some bosses with some insane mechanics, and you know what? It's really hard to get insanely overpowered and overleveled at certain points in the game. Where in this game, I was fighting to not be overleveled and not overpowered, and I couldn't do it. I got super overpowered, overleveled, and about 70% of the game was like very easy, to the point of like I'm just purely playing it to enjoy the story, and then I'm just, when a boss comes up, boom, which is fine, but I do think that it slightly takes away from the game experience as a whole. However, at the end of the day, I love Octopath Traveler 2, right? I played it to 100%. I'm gonna play Octopath Traveler 3. The pros far outweigh the cons, and the cons that I have, I think could be pretty easily fixed with some sort of addition to the game, some sort of difficulty mode for the hardcore fans, or just adding a bigger post game, right? Make the casual game for that, but then have a DLC or something for the post game, or just a more expansive post game of like tons of if they had added like 20 more super interesting, fun, like bosses with interesting mechanics that you have to change up your party for, use different strategies, I'd be fucking in, bro. I would be in. But it kind of feels like this game wasn't built for that. Like I'm not sure how they would do it yet, because the final boss already kind of requires you to hit damage caps, and just making it required for you to hit damage caps limits your build diversity. But you can still do a lot of interesting things. But overall, I'm just starting to ramble now, but these are my overall thoughts. I still think the game is probably like a solid 8 out of 10 if I had to give it a quick off the cuff number here. I love the game. Absolutely so many things that are irreplaceable, and it's one of the best JRPGs that come out in a long time. Probably the best JRPG to come out since like Persona 5, honestly. And I love it. I can't wait for Octopath Traveler 3. And you know what? What a badass game overall. I think you guys would like it. I loved it. Yeah, I got some issues, but it doesn't at all take away from the fact that it's one of my favorite games in quite a while. Just had so much fucking fun playing it from every single hour, and probably my game of the year of 2023. I know it's early into 2023. We'll see what else comes out, but let's just say this, if there are games that beat this out for game of the year, fuck, this is a good year for video gaming, and I'm very excited for it. Anyway, much love. Purplatypus is Purplatypus. Let me know what you think about the game, where you think I'm right, where you think I'm wrong. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.